This is Chin Music.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back to another episode of Chin Music on Fanatics TV, brought to you by Stephen O'Keefe and myself, a man who's much happier that Scott Boland is now spending more time playing international cricket and less time playing domestic cricket, because tonight was another great example of why he used to rap me on the pad and on the outside edge non-stop every game we played against each other, and it just makes me feel so much better to watch him do it at the test level now. So, Stephen, what'd you make of today's?
Mate, look, I agree. Isn't it funny? You see these guys, Michael Neser and Scotty Bowl, and I'm just so impressed about the workmanship of the way they go about their business. You know, it's just full attacking the pegs. And we talked about it in Shield cricket for a long time, how they attack the stumps relentlessly and always are putting pressure on your forward defence. I remember the last game I played against Michael Neser. He got me out caught and bowled. You always felt like you could drive him, but it wasn't quite there. And he's also an unbelievable fielder. So seeing him take those two caught and bowls was not a surprise. But going back to the start of the game, you know, England, they needed early wickets and they got them through Stokes again at the front, you know, leading from the front, and Atkinson finally getting a bit of reward. But, you know, we talk about Boland, we talk about Neser, we talk about Starc as the engine room with the bowling efforts. They were the engine room with the batting efforts. You know, the last 4 wickets put on 180, and you were saying last night how important it is to win the battle into the night. And, you know, Scott Boland faced 70 balls. He put on 75 with Mitchell Starc. You could forgive Mitchell Starc for just going out there and just going, you know what, boys, I'm just going to have a slog here. You know, he dug in, and he does it time and time again when difficulties get tough. It's almost like he feeds off his batting, will feed into his bowling. That was just that gave me a bit of goosebumps watching that bowling unit bat.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I think, especially as you mentioned there, in the context of the game, and I think if the shoe was on the other foot, there's just no way the English tail would bat like that. They'd come out and obviously try and score as many runs as quick as possible, which sort of worked for them the night before. But I just think that, like, that took a whole lot of nurries. You know, you got guys that typically probably don't have a whole heap of batting skill, taking it as deep as possible. They're not, you know, Barrel's not throwing his wicket away. Starkey usually loves playing his shots, and, you know, even he knuckled down, and they saw that was a moment to grind this team, to really bury them and make sure not only that, but that they had the best conditions to bowl under, and that ball was still hard come, you know, 9:30 tonight, and it was, 9:30 Sydney time anyway, which is 8:30 in Brisbane, but you know, and it was still hard. And I mean, I will say though, I mean, it was great batting from all those guys, and this could be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say the spell of bowling between Neser and Doggett. I know Doggett didn't take a wicket, but those two came on, I think we're about 1 for 90 off 18 overs. And I'm going to put the shoe on the other foot, and I think if England were bowling in that situation at 1 for 90 off 18 overs, they'd go, well, nothing's happening here. We need to try something different. We're going to go bounce a plan. Or they'd try something really extreme. And what I like, it's crazy that I'm saying I love this because it's just traditional cricket. But I think for the first time in this game anyway, I guess both teams stopped drinking from this sort of aggressive cricket Kool-Aid. And Steve and the bowlers just said, you know what we actually need to do is we just need to stop the runs a little bit. Let's put the ball in the right area. Let's bring our length just back a fraction again. And, you know, Doggy probably came on and I would say looked as threatening as he has the whole series in terms of when he's actually trying to hit, you know, what he does in Shield cricket really well, which is that sort of fourth stump length. But they bowled 10 overs of really tight stuff there, you know, and Nessa a couple of caught and bowls. But I'm not sure I've ever seen a game where a bowler's got 2 caught and bowls and a drop caught and bowled in 5 overs of bowling. And it's like, what, guys? Can we like, if we're not are we learning? Or I'm not sure what's going on there. Like, there's a drop caught and bowled, there's a caught and bowled, and there's a caught and bowled. The bloke's bowled 30 balls.
And there's also the Mitchell Starc caught and bowled, you know, from Zach Crawley. You know, these guys, Moe, are just fair dinkum slow learners. You know, like, you're going out, you're watching Harry Brook, you know, further to your point. Starkey's just going wide to him and he's just chasing it. And you're like, this is the only way he's trying to knock you over. Let him come to you, get straight, push the ball into the offside, get a single or whip one off your pads. And further to your point, Mo, like tactically, I think Australia today were excellent. Like last night, it was a bit frenzied. Guys were backing away, going really hard. It was traditional and I loved it. We went out, the Australian team went out with a purpose of grinding this English team into the ground, which happened. And then when they came out with their bowling plans, they executed. It was full, it was aggressive on the stumps. And I think Steve Smith has a large part to play in this. Michael Neser, he's not going to try and bump you out. He can still get the ball up around 130, but he knows it's his strengths. He also knows that the strengths of these Poms is they want to drive. And when they get going, they can do it. But Steve challenged them. And I think the bowlers backed that up and executed their plans beautifully. Good reward, I think, for Michael Neser. Good reward for Scotty Boland, who looked as hard as anyone out there to face. And a big feather in the cap to Smudger, who, I mean, we always expect it. The two dismissals for me that really stood out was the Joe Root nick off Mitchell Starc. Jake Weatherer was at deep backward point, but he brought him up, 10 metres. And you could see Root trying to push and get off strike and almost filthy at the non-striker for not going. And that was the ball before. Then Starkey bowls the full one in the nick. And, it goes down to a good piece of fast bowling, good referral, I think, from Smudge to get the dismissal. And then to Jamie Smith, took a slip out, had three men out on the onside, almost telling him like in the first innings of Perth where he got the glove, we're going to bump you. And then Starkey just executes this beautiful full ball and gets a nick. And it's this constant communication between bowler and captain and field. And then the plan, which is just normal cricket, like you said, attacking at fuller length and nicking them off. That's how you do it at the Gabba when the ball's moving. It's how you do it all around the world. And particularly against England, who just want to stand pretty still and use their hands to drive. It was, a smart cricket from Australia today.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I feel like maybe yesterday, when you watch Australia bowl, England might feel like they might have pushed that short ball plan a little bit too much. And I know they got a few wickets from it, but, what did that do to the actual ball? What did that do to the scoreboard in terms of the runs continuing to flow through that time? What did that do to the bowlers' efforts and their lack of ability to keep coming back to bowl, spells later, like today, less effective today, obviously. And in terms of being effective, after Starkey faced 150 balls batting today, bowled a heap of stuff yesterday, day before. And then, his first spell today, and forgive him because he's just been, batting for 3.5 hours and then he comes out and we're expecting him to take a wicket in the first over again. But he actually got faster as the day went on. He's bowled 12 or 13 overs again today. And by the end of the day, after batting for the best part of 3.5 hours, by the end of the day, every ball was clocking 145 again, and he wasn't missing his length. He's gone none for 36 off 6 overs in his first 6 and still looked threatening. But, probably his speed wasn't quite up as high as we've seen it so far this series, which given the load of bowling that he's had, that's fair enough. But the country, he saw a sniff. Ness cracked it open with a couple of caught and bowled. Him and Barrel come on, and then he's just full steam ahead. He keeps charging in harder and harder and harder. And I guess I feel like that's a testament to him and obviously, his longevity as a cricketer. You don't get to take as many wickets as he's taken without that sort of, that relentlessness, that resilience to just keep coming back and that the endurance to do what he does. And, I guess when you look around, and it's probably not completely fair, but, Mitchell Starc hasn't played a test match in a long time as well. It's been, since the Windies would have been his last test before this. So that's, at least that's almost 2 months, I'm going to say, at the very least. And I feel like, that's a long time between games. And, I do have to question, someone like Jofra's physical preparation. His speeds are getting slower, quicker, and he's looking less effective. And you've got to go, well, Mitch is 36 and he's 6'6", and he runs in and he's heavier, like his body. He's weighing more than Jofra as well. And I get a question, I guess. Well, why is Jofra dropping off so much after his first spell? Because I don't know. Like England need him and Wood to be outstanding to challenge in this series, I believe, and there's no doubt Jofra's an outstanding and a world-class bowler, but I think Mitch has just shown us why he's been world-class for 15 years or 10 years rather than world-class for 1 or 2. And, I'm sure Jofra will get there if he plays this format for long enough, because he's definitely got the skills and the assets. But, that physical preparation and that fitness that we're seeing from Mitchell at the moment is just, we're not seeing it from, I actually really enjoyed what Bryden Cast did in terms of his fitness and his he kept charging in, but we're not seeing it from their strike bowler in Jofra.
Yeah, and I think if you ask that team who they're most concerned about when they're up and running, it's Jofra Archer. And, 145.7, I think it was his quickest ball of the match, was in his 10th over. And I was watching him before his 11th, and he was on his haunches and blowing. I almost thought, okay, that might be it. We might see a Cameron Green here. But no, he wanted the ball again because he senses this moment. He senses the opportunity. He's got 418 wickets. He's gone past Wazzy Macram. This guy takes wickets for fun, right? Strikes at 46. It's unheard of what he does. And even if he's done for 36 off 6, it doesn't change his mental attitude or approach. He just continues to find ways. He is so connected. He's not just running in bowling the ball anymore. There is a distinct plan. And I almost think that about the whole bowling lineup. You could question potentially picking, say, Nisa and Doggett into this team and bowl them. But what you get with these guys are players who know their game so well. Like Michael Nisa can step into that arena and know, this is how I do it. I've done it over in England. I've done it in Australia for years and years and years. This is just how I play my game. They're so comfortable in their skin. And people, where's the next fast quick coming from? Well, there's so much value in picking a 35, 36-year-old bowling because he knows what he's doing. It's so subtle. Each game, in Perth, none for 60, changed his line a little bit, got the nicks. This game here, again, first innings, 1 for, but again, a little bit fuller and going more knee roll and just a little bit each way. It's so subtle, and to the naked eye, you just don't think it's too much. But it's these guys who know their game, 6 inches this way, a foot wider to him. Their plans are just, so spot on. And I put it down to a bit of captaincy, just having that bloke who's talking to you each delivery, without pissing in your pocket, mate. You're always with the fast bowlers in a T20 game when it's magnified, talking about each ball. But I could sense it out there with the Aussies, even in a test match. It was ball by ball at night. They really were setting up for plans and knew that they had to back up what the bowlers did at the back end of that game. And I just thought it was a really good day's cricket when yesterday seemed like they were a bit lost and got caught up in it. They brought it back and, they're right on top now, the Aussies. I think England have got a lead of 40. Stokes is still at the crease. I didn't mind Jackson in the first innings, but, this is the partnership, right? That has to go on. You could probably make a comment if you like, Mo, on what you think of the England batting and maybe potentially, what you may think may happen with these two at the crease. But, they're so far behind in this game, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What are they? Still 40, 50 runs behind?
43,
yeah. Yeah. And 4 wickets in hand. They're going to need to basically try and do what Australia did today, except instead of being, we were 50 ahead last night, or 40 ahead last night, and they're 40 behind. So, they're going to need... It's all on the two that are batting now for me anyway. Will Jacks can obviously still play. You got that man Ben Stokes at the crease, who, again, when we talk about someone like Starkey and we spoke about Cast, but Stokesy was cramping most of last night, and he's still running in bowling, over 130 k's an hour. He's 115 Test matches, that's. But the bloke's literally cramping and still charging in and then knocked Inglis over. It was just when you watch that, you're like, that's Test cricket for me, because you're not rarely are you going to be 100% the whole way through the 5 days. You're going to be sore, you're going to be this, you're going to be tired, whatever. And he just kept ploughing on. And you could see Joe Root was getting frustrated with him because Joe wanted him to come off and stop bowling. But, it was that's the type of stuff that because he does that, hopefully, you know, that rubs off on his other players, and then they're going to want to do that in the future as well. But to be honest, I think, you know, when Starkey got Smith out, a great piece of bowling, but it looked like Barrel was going to get him out any moment anyway. He looked like he keeps finding that gap, and that gap. Well, both sides of Jamie Smith's bat at the moment, but it's other than I would say that, you know, when they look to drive, they probably just get out ahead, or their bat gets out in front of them, what looks like a bit too far. But other than that, like I don't know, their techniques look great. Like they look like really good cricketers.
Nice
it's just it's just, I don't know. It's this sort of one way or the highway type mentality, which I don't know. I mean, if it's good enough for the world's best to learn and, like, you know, get better and sort of reflect on what they did last game and adapt to what the conditions are and change their game. We've seen, you know, Steve, you know, just as a player, just completely changed the way he bats throughout his career, depending where he goes, who he's facing. And I don't know if the English team are doing that. I'm not sure if they're adapting or if they're just going, this is the way I play and I'm going to keep playing this way. And
it certainly
I
seems
don't know.
like it. Yeah.
And if, like, I love that in terms of, play aggressively, but we're allowed to learn along the way. Like, we're allowed to learn from our mistakes. I just think it's a little bit, I don't know. I could be wrong that they might be learning, but they're definitely I guess, what do you call it when you feel like their language, their public language is like, oh yeah, no, we've got a plan. We know exactly what we're going to do. And we're not changing. It's like, well, how do you even know what the wicket's going to do yet? Like, surely you adapt a little bit out there, but I don't know.
Cricket's been around for a long time, and it'll find you out. And I think England are. This is a hard test, you know, to come over and win away from home. Like, Australia have retained the Ashes for a long time, but Australia have also only ever won a series in the last 20 years over in England, once in 20 years. And England have only won a series here in Australia in 20 years. It's hard to win away from home, which means that when you're facing these new conditions, you have to change the way that you play. History will tell you that you can't come over and keep doing the same thing. 20 teams will tell you that have come over for Ashes series and more, and will tell you through pure results. And one thing that highlights, and it's only a small thing, you know, Smudger wearing the black stickers under his eye. This is a guy with 10,000 test runs, and we know he's a bit quirky. You know, we know he's a bit superstitious. But if it's good enough for him to think, right, I average close to 30 with a pink ball, I'm going to try this little 1% thing that I think may work. You know, Smudger will change his technique. But for me, even, it just highlights a bigger thing for him, that he is always trying to find something else to give himself a bit of an edge, you know. And when I watch the England play, I see it a little bit with Joe Root. His plan were a lot different. You know, Stokes looks like he wants to knuckle down. But a lot of these guys who just continually drive on the up, you know, you go through their dismissals. It's so different to what it was in Perth. It's caught and bowled, caught and bowled, caught keeper, you know, caught keeper. But, you know, on forward defences, not these wide driving ones. And, you know, Australia are changing their plans from innings to innings. England, as you said, they're answering C to every question. It's the same answer to every question. And, you know, it's not working. You know, it's not working. So how they bounce back, it's going to take the likes of Stokes, who was cramping yesterday, putting his body through hell, a bit like what Starkey's doing, leaders just standing up and stepping forward. It's going to take something like that magic. And he's got it in him, you know. There's no harder contest for Jacks at the moment. I think that last over to Starc, you think, wow, he would never have faced a bigger moment in his career than what he was doing there in that moment and got through. So that's got to give them some sense of confidence from an English point of view to go, right, we just got through the hardest part. Now we know tomorrow's sun comes out. It's a good opportunity for us to get a lead. The ball isn't playing too many tricks. You know, Duckett got one that stayed low, but he get a bit more heat on it. You know, cracks open. You know, you've got to believe that if you get 150 plus, that you're in the game, you know, if you're an England batting team.
Yeah, I had a different view. I thought the ball was starting to zing around a little bit late today. And I actually thought, while I was watching, I thought, you know, if England get 150 or 200 ahead, that could be tough to chase with, you know, Barrel starting to zing a few off the cracks and a couple keeping low. And you mentioned there, Ducky's one from around the wicket. That definitely kept low. But I thought if they could get ahead, and they've kind of sort of blown a really good opportunity at 1 for 90, and obviously maybe the wicket is doing maybe a bit more than what it looks like on TV, which is usually always the case. Like what you see on TV is usually magnified live when you're playing. But I think I feel like they still. There was something before this series, and I know you backed them to win the series, but there was this. I was really nervous for the first time in a long time about England coming out here in terms of knocking over the Aussies, and especially when with no Cummins, no Hazelwood, and I mean, the game's not over yet, but it's looking likely to be 2-0 to Australia, and it might not be, but that's without Australia's two of Australia's best 3 bowlers playing.
Hazelwood, Cummins, and Lyon out of that team.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't have expected that and these results.
And then to be, if we go into the third test, and it's Cummins in for Doggett, and I don't know, Jofra can't get up, then they've literally lost Jofra and Wood, and we've gained Cummins and Hazelwood. And I just don't know. I'm not sure what happens there from game 3 onwards. So I think the next 2 hours tomorrow is going to be huge, because I just don't know if England can come back if they don't win this game.
Yep, it's series defining for them, Mo. And, if they lose this, they need to win the next 3 to reclaim the Ashes. Mate, good summary again today for Chin Music and Fanatics TV. Interesting first couple of hours. How many times do they say that? The cricket change room, just be, watchful. We'll certainly be tuning in. And if you're an English supporter, well, you hope Stokes and Jackson can get some runs. But as Aussie supporters that we are, I think they're going to get it done and win tomorrow. So stay tuned, and we'll see you tomorrow.
That was Chin Music. Like and subscribe for more.